We are going to move forward with our unit on the ancient Greek civilization. We have already learned that a civilization is a group of people who live together, work together in a very organized way. And that organization comes down to different components. We've already begun to look at three of those components, the first being their jobs. We learned in ancient Greece they were farmers, shepherds, and seafarers, and those were the main source of income or jobs and livelihood for the ancient Greeks. Then we looked at another component, which was religion. Religion was very important to the Greeks, and they worshipped many gods and goddesses. The king of the gods was Zeus, who was said to be the god of lightning and thunder. There were 12 gods and goddesses we looked at. The Greek people believed they lived atop the highest mountain in Greece, which was Mount Olympus. And these gods and goddesses were connected to things or would explain things that happened in nature, such as lightning and thunder, or Artemis, who is the goddess of hunting wildlife and animals, Poseidon, the god of sea and earthquakes, Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love. Um, and then we had gods and goddesses of war and wisdom and fire. So they each had a different role in nature or the world. Um, there was a festival that had begun, a celebration to honor Zeus, and it brought together people from all over Greece and even in surrounding faraway countries where they would come together and they would compete to be the best at the different athletic events. It started out as foot races, horse races, chariot races, and it was only for men. And this was the Olympics. The Olympics were held every 4 years, and the winners that were considered heroes in their city states, and they would wear a crown of laurel leaves atop their head to show that they were the winner and that was their prize. This is something that has been passed down over and throughout hundreds of years, and is something we still do and recognize today. We call that a contribution. Another contribution that came about from the time of the Olympics and the Greek people was art. Myron, who was a sculptor, he had created a sculpture out of marble, which depicted an athlete from the Olympics. We can still see it in museums today, and that's the discus thrower. He had a colleague or a friend who attended the Olympics with him named Pindar, and Pindar was from a different city state, but they put aside their differences in order to come together and honor Zeus and to complete artwork to celebrate the Olympics. He was a poet and he created odes, which would be words that could be set to music for singing and dancing, but it focused on the determination and the emotions of the athletes as they competed in the events. We can still see and hear about these things today, so these are great contributions. Well, today we're going to begin looking at city-states, and city-states is another major component of ancient civilization. A city-state is an independent city and the surrounding area it controlled. As we can see, these developed because of the geography of ancient Greece. You had the high mountains. The parts of it were surrounded by the different seas, the coastline around the Aegean and the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. And so the different little communities that developed, they were isolated from one another and they began to set themselves up that way. They became their own little nation. They would control their own group of people with their own rules and government. They didn't really have much to do with the other um, city states. In fact, they would only come together usually in times of emergency. Well, we are going to look at the first city state today, but before we do, let's look at some vocabulary words. The first is permanently. Permanently means continuing in the same way without change for all time. Spartan, well, this is going to be the name of the Greek city-state we see, but it means harsh, strict, and uncomfortable. And we're going to see how that word has developed. It's an adjective we can use to describe things in our lives today based on what life was like for the Spartan people. Self-discipline is a type of training to improve yourself. You sometimes have to give up things like luxuries and comfort in order to become better. Athletes and military have a great deal of self-discipline to grow and become better at what they do. Conquest is the act of conquering or taking over something or someone to win. And council is a group of people chosen to look after the interest of a group, town, or organization. When you look at this picture, you notice looks like a home with a mom, maybe her daughter and her little boy in the window, waving as the soldiers pass by. Well, this is an image that depicts life in Sparta. Listen as I read aloud, all for Sparta. Lysander was ready. This was his 7th birthday and also the birthday of his twin sister Disa, whose name means double. This would be their last birthday celebration together. For when a boy like Lysander in the city-state of Sparta turned 7, his life changed forever. Until now, Lysander had lived at home with his mother and sister. Occasionally they would see their father whenever he visited home, for fathers did not live at home with their families in Sparta. Instead, most Spartan men served permanently in the Spartan army and lived in the army camps. On one of his visits, Lysander's father had explained, at the age of 7, a Spartan boy from families like ours begin their formal training for life in the army. We believe Spartan soldiers are the greatest in all of Greece. And if you are to take your place among us, you must start preparing early. You must make yourself as strong, as fast, and as tough as you can. I expect you to run great distances, to climb steep mountainsides, and to swim in rough waters. Lysander's father went on, when I can, I will spend some time here and show you how to use a sword and a spear and how to wrestle. I expect the best from you, as Sparta expects the best from all of its people. Can you imagine having a conversation like this? To us today, the Spartan way of life seems terribly hard. Spartans had few comforts in life and had to accept many hardships. We even use that word Spartan today to describe something difficult that requires you to be strong in body and mind, and that takes a great deal of self-discipline. To Spartans like Lysander and his father, this was the only way they knew how to live. But things had not always been this way. Long before the time of Lysander or his father, Sparta had been just one of the many city-states in Greece. Many people in Sparta were farmers, seafarers, and merchants, like people in most other parts of Greece. But when the population of their city grew with more and more people, Sparta's leaders decided that it should attack another city so that Spartans would have more land and food. The Spartans fought a long war of conquest against this other city. This war was so difficult to win, but the Sparta's leaders decided, we will rebuild our city and make Sparta the strongest military force in the world so that no one will be able to attack us or fight back against us. We will make all of Sparta into one great fighting machine, and every civilization must do their part to make that machine unstoppable. Many of our men will be soldiers, and we will train them to be mighty warriors. Almost everyone else who lives in Sparta, women as well as men, will have to work hard at other jobs while these soldiers are off fighting. But for many Spartan women, their main job will be to give birth to many children so that Sparta will have more soldiers. The leaders of the military city-state of Sparta completely changed the way all the Spartans lived in order to make this happen. Few people got to vote on how the government would work or what it would do. In fact, women were not even allowed to vote at all or take part in the government. But they were to concentrate on life at home. Even among the men, there were very few who were allowed to make decisions. There were two kings instead of one, so that one person could not hold all of the power for himself. The two Spartan kings, in addition to help running the government, were the leaders of the Spartan army. If one man died in battle, the other would still be alive to lead the city-state. To pass laws, there was a council, or group of people who were chosen to look after the interest of the city-state. It was made up of 28 elders and the two kings. Whereas the two kings could be young men, the other men in the council had to be at least 60 years old to be sure they had enough life experience and wisdom to help run the city-state. Sparta was mostly what we call a closed society. That is, Spartans did not conduct a lot of business with other parts of Greece. Instead, they tried to do everything they could to make or grow their own things in the city-state so that they wouldn't need to go to other city-states. They didn't want to open themselves up to other people's ideas or how to live, or to a possible invasion by another city-state. Well, as he celebrated his 7th birthday, Lysander thought, "Today I will leave my family home to begin training as a soldier." Stop and think. If you were Lysander, which most of you are 7 or 8 years old, and you knew that you had to go and leave your whole family and move off to a camp where you would train to be a soldier, how would you feel? Later in the day, a husky, strong Spartan soldier came to the house to lead Lysander away. The fellow introduced himself as Platon, which means broad-shouldered Greek. Lysander wanted to look brave in front of him, so he didn't cry when he said goodbye to his mother and sister. But still, when his sister Disa whispered, "I will miss you," he whispered back, "I will miss you too." As Lysander marched off with Platon, the soldier told him, "Your father and I served together in a war. In fact, he saved my life. So when I heard that his son was going to join us, I requested the chance to bring you to your new home." So this might have made things a little bit easier, seeing that it was one of his dad's friends who came to escort him to the new place to live, but I suspect he was still scared and nervous. The soldier continued, "Life at the training camp will be very different from what you have known. They will take away your shoes and you will learn how to march and run barefoot in an emergency. You will get rough, uncomfortable old clothing to wear. It's not comfortable, but neither is the armor, and you may as well get used to discomfort." As for the food, Platon grinned. "It's even worse than what we soldiers eat, and there's not enough of it to fill your belly. But sometimes the soldiers will offer you and the other boys some nice fresh cheese, if you can get to it. The soldiers won't make it easy for you. Only the bravest and strongest boys will be able to accomplish that feat." "Or the hungriest," Lysander said. Platon grinned at him and said, "I think you're going to do just fine." And they marched onward together. Here we have a 7-year-old little boy who lived in the city-state of Sparta. At the age of 7, all the boys were required to leave their family and go to the army camp where they would begin to train as a soldier. This was because the Spartan way of life was all about being the greatest military nation. They didn't want to be susceptible to attack. They wanted to be able to conquer other nations. In fact, Sparta's um, had two kings. That way, if one were to die in battle, there would be another one to continue leading the army. Um, War was the most important thing for them, and it changed everything about the life in Sparta. Stop and think. Would you have liked to live in Sparta? Not today, but way back then in ancient Greek civilization. Do you think you would have wanted to live in Sparta? I want you to think why or why not. As we continue to go on, we're going to look at other aspects, or I mean, city states and how they are alike or different from Sparta. And then to end our unit, we're going to be writing an opinion paragraph to tell me what city-state would you have wanted to live in and the reasonings for that. Um, so remember about Sparta being about war. Life was difficult. It was all about becoming the great warring city-state. It was about army and military life. So we will move forward tomorrow with Athens and the olive tree, which is our next city-state.